The sky above Velerath Prime burned red with enemy ships. Talena stood at her station in the underground command center, her thin blue fingers shaking as she worked the damaged communication console. Around her, the other Kethviri officers moved in quiet panic. Their world was dying, and everyone knew it. Elder Morath stood at the center of the room, his old eyes watching the display screens. Each screen showed the same terrible picture. Hundreds of dark warships surrounded their planet like a cage. The Dominion of Ash had come for them, just as they had come for so many worlds before. "How long until they attack?" Morath asked, his voice tired and heavy. Commander Velson checked his screen. "They have given us 72 hours to surrender. After that, they will begin the bombardment." Morath closed his eyes. The Dominion did not take prisoners. When they conquered a world, they stripped it of everything valuable and left nothing behind but ash and bones. That was how they got their name. "We must call for help," Talena said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. She was young, barely past her coming-of-age ceremony, but she had always been clever with machines. "The Galactic Council, they have to help us." Velson shook his head sadly. "The Council will not come. They fear the Dominion too much. They will send thoughts and prayers, but no ships." "We have to try," Talena insisted. "If we do nothing, we die anyway." Morath looked at the young officer for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Send the signal. Let the galaxy hear our cry. Perhaps someone will listen." Talena turned back to her console and began working. The communication array had been damaged in the first attack. Half the relays were broken, and the targeting system was destroyed. She would have to send the signal blind, hoping it would reach the right coordinates. She typed in the emergency frequency for the Galactic Council and pressed the transmit button. The console made a strange sound, and several warning lights flashed. Something was wrong with the signal path. But the message went out into the darkness of space, carrying with it the desperate hope of a dying world. What Talena did not know was that the damaged relay had changed the direction of her signal. Instead of traveling toward the Council headquarters in the Andromeda sector, it bounced through an old, forgotten relay station and shot off in a completely different direction. It traveled for hours through empty space until it reached a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star. It reached Earth. In the deep underground facility known as Signal Station Alpha, a young technician named Kevin jumped in his chair when his screen lit up with an unknown transmission. He had been half asleep, expecting another quiet night of monitoring empty space. Instead, he was looking at something that made his heart race. "Sir," he called out to his supervisor, "you need to see this." Admiral Lisa Carter was not supposed to be at the station that night. She had only stopped by to check on some paperwork before heading home. But when Kevin showed her the transmission, she forgot all about going home. The message was in a language that Earth's computers could barely translate. But the meaning was clear enough. Someone out there was dying. Someone was asking for help. Lisa immediately contacted Fleet Commander Jake Morrison at the main military headquarters. Within an hour, she was standing in a secure conference room with Morrison and Secretary of Defense Amy Patterson, watching the message play on a large screen. "This is genuine," Lisa said. "We have confirmed the signal origin. It came from a star system about 400 light-years away." Amy leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the screen. "Do we know who sent it?" she asked. "Our databases call them the Kethviri. They are a peaceful species, no military to speak of. They have never made contact with us directly." Jake rubbed his chin thoughtfully, "which means they probably sent this signal to someone else, and it reached us by mistake." "That is our guess as well," Lisa agreed. "But does it matter? They are asking for help. Someone is trying to kill them." The room was quiet for a moment. Everyone knew the history. Humanity had discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago and had quickly learned that the galaxy was full of other species. But those species wanted nothing to do with humans. They called Earth a death world, a planet so dangerous that nothing peaceful could possibly evolve there. They thought humans were violent, unpredictable, and terrifying. So humanity had been ignored, cut off from galactic society, left alone in their corner of space. Now someone was calling for help, not on purpose, but calling nonetheless. We could ignore it, Amy said slowly. They did not mean to contact us. The galaxy has made it very clear they want nothing to do with humanity. Jake shook his head. We could, but we will not. He looked at the two women with hard eyes. Somewhere out there, innocent people are about to die. They sent a message into the dark, hoping someone would hear. Someone did. We heard. And I will be damned if we do nothing. Lisa felt a smile forming on her face. This was why she had joined the fleet. This was what humanity was supposed to be. I will mobilize the Third Fleet immediately, she said. We can have ships ready to launch within 24 hours. Amy nodded slowly. I will inform the President. This will need full authorization, but I do not think she will say no. She paused and looked at both officers. The galaxy thinks we are monsters. Maybe it is time we show them what kind of monsters we really are. On Velerath Prime, Talina checked her console again. The signal had been sent hours ago, but there was no response. No message from the Council. No promise of rescue. Just silence. Elder Morath put a gentle hand on her shoulder. You tried, young one. That is all anyone can ask. I think the signal went wrong, she admitted quietly. The relay was damaged. I do not know where the message actually went. Morath's face grew pale. Where do you think it went? Talina pulled up her calculations and felt her blood turn cold. The numbers pointed to a region of space that every species in the galaxy knew to avoid. The home of the Death World species. The territory of the violent ones. Elder, she whispered, I think I sent our cry for help to the humans. Morath stared at her in horror. The Dominion of Ash was terrible, but at least their cruelty was predictable. Humans were something else entirely. The story said they were warriors, born from a world that tried to kill them every single day. They were survivors of poison air, deadly water, and predators that hunted in the darkness. What have we done? Morath said softly. Talina had no answer. She could only watch the stars and wait to see what horror she had accidentally invited to their world. But deep down, in a place she did not want to examine too closely, she felt something strange, something that might have been hope, because she had read the old reports about humans, the ones the Council tried to hide, and those reports said something interesting. Humans were dangerous, yes. Violent, yes. Unpredictable, absolutely. But they had one trait that made them different from every other dangerous species in the galaxy. Humans protected the weak. She did not know if the stories were true. She did not know if help was coming, or if she had just made everything worse. All she could do was wait and watch the sky. Somewhere out there, across the vast emptiness of space, an armada was beginning to form. The United Earth Defense Council met in a massive room deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. 20 of the most powerful people on Earth sat around a curved table, watching Admiral Lisa Carter present her findings. On the screen behind her, the distress signal from Velerath Prime played on a loop. The Kethvari have less than 60 hours before the deadline, Lisa explained. After that, the Dominion of Ash will begin their assault. Based on our intelligence, the Dominion fleet contains approximately 300 warships. The Kethvari have 17. General Marcus Webb leaned back in his chair. And how does this concern us? The galaxy has made their feelings about humanity very clear. Why should we risk our people for aliens who would not give us the time of day? Because they asked for help. Fleet Commander Jake Morrison said simply. It doesn't matter if they meant to ask us. The signal reached Earth. A species is facing extinction. We have the power to stop it. The debate went back and forth for nearly an hour. Some argued that humanity should focus on its own problems. Others worried about starting a war with an empire they knew almost nothing about. A few even suggested that this could be a trap designed to lure human ships into an ambush. But in the end, the vote was unanimous. Humanity would answer the call. President Diana Hayes addressed the council from her seat at the head of the table. We have spent 50 years being told we are the villains of this galaxy. We have been called monsters, beasts, and deathworlders. Maybe we are all of those things. She paused and looked at each face in the room. But we are also the species that runs into burning buildings to save strangers. We are the species that stands between the weak and those who would hurt them. If the galaxy wants to see what humans are really made of, then let us show them. Within hours, the orders went out across Earth and all of her colonies. The Third Fleet would launch immediately. Captain Ben Taylor of the flagship USS Valiant was given command of the mission. His orders were simple. Reach Velerath Prime, protect the Kethviri, and remove the Dominion threat by any means necessary. Ben was a tall man with tired eyes and steady hands. He had been a soldier for 20 years and had seen enough fighting to last several lifetimes. When he received his orders, he felt something stir in his chest that he had not felt in a long time. Purpose. He assembled his senior staff in the briefing room of the Valiant. Commander Nora Reyes, his tactical officer, studied the star charts with sharp eyes. She was the best strategist Ben had ever worked with, capable of seeing patterns and opportunities that others missed. Lieutenant Danny Shaw, the chief engineer, was already calculating how fast they could push the engines without tearing the ship apart. We have 47 ships ready to launch, Ben said. It is not much, but it is a start. It will have to be enough, Nora replied. We can pick up more ships along the way. The colonies have been notified. Anyone who wants to join the fleet can fall in behind us. Ben nodded. And let us not waste any more time. We launch in 1 hour. The word spread across human space faster than anyone expected. The distress signal was broadcast on every news channel, every social media platform, and every communication network. People watched the desperate plea from a species they had never heard of. And something in the human spirit awakened. Ships began to mobilize everywhere. The Mars Colonial Defense Force sent 12 cruisers. The mining stations in the asteroid belt donated their armed transport vessels. Private corporations that owned military-grade ships offered them to the fleet at no cost. Veterans who had retired decades ago came out of hiding and demanded to be given commands. By the time the Valiant left Earth orbit, the fleet had grown to 93 ships. By the time they passed Jupiter, it was 158. And by the time they reached the outer edge of the solar system, ready to jump to faster-than-light speed, the fleet had swelled to over 400 warships of various sizes and capabilities. Ben stood on the bridge of the Valiant and watched the fleet formation on his display screen. He had expected maybe 100 ships. He had hoped for 150. But 400 was beyond anything he could have imagined. "Sir," Danny called out from his station, "I am receiving a message from the civilian transport Mercy. They are requesting permission to join the fleet." Ben frowned. The Mercy is a hospital ship. They have no weapons. They say they know that, sir. They want to come anyway. They say someone will need medical help when the fighting is over, and they want to be there. Ben felt a lump form in his throat. Tell them permission granted, and tell them thank you. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving behind the solar system that had been humanity's home for thousands of years. They traveled through the darkness between stars, a ribbon of light carrying hope to a world that had none. On Velerath Prime, Talina sat alone in the communications center, monitoring signals out of habit more than hope. Elder Morath and Commander Velson had decided not to tell the population about her mistake. The people were scared enough, without knowing that they had accidentally contacted the most feared species in the galaxy. She was half asleep when her console began to beep. She sat up straight and checked the readings, certain that she was seeing things. But the numbers did not lie. "Elder Morath," she called into her communicator, her voice shaking. "You need to come to the communication center immediately." When Morath arrived, Talina pointed at her screen with a trembling finger. "Long-range sensors have detected something entering our star system. A large group of ships." Morath felt his heart sink. "The Dominion reinforcements?" "No, sir. These ships are coming from the opposite direction, from Earth space." She looked up at him with wide eyes. "There are over 400 of them." Morath stared at the screen in disbelief. 400 ships. The humans had sent 400 ships for strangers they had never met. Strangers who had accidentally called them. Strangers who had spent decades avoiding them like they were diseased. Why would they do this? What do they want from us? Talina remembered the old reports she had studied, the ones about human behavior that no one else seemed to care about. "I do not think they want anything, Elder. I think they are simply answering our call." "No species does that," Morath said. "No one risks their own people for strangers." "Humans do," Talina replied softly. "That is what the reports say. When someone asks for help, humans answer. It is who they are." The Dominion of Ash received word of the approaching fleet from their scout ships. Warlord Quetzal, commander of the blockade, read the report with amusement. 400 ships from a species that the galaxy considered primitive and backwards? It had to be a mistake. "They are Deathworlders," one of his officers noted. "Violent and unstable. Perhaps they are coming to conquer the planet for themselves." Quetzal waved a dismissive hand. "Then they will have to fight us for it, and they will lose. No species mobilizes that quickly for a cause. These are probably just pirates, hoping to grab whatever scraps we leave behind." He was so confident in his assessment that he did not bother to increase his defensive position. He did not call for reinforcements. He simply waited for the primitives to arrive so he could crush them and continue with his conquest. It was a decision he would regret for the rest of his very short life. The human armada dropped out of faster-than-light speed at the edge of the Velerath system, and every sensor in the area lit up with warnings. 400 warships in perfect formation, their weapons already powered, their shields already raised. On the bridge of the USS Valiant, Captain Ben Taylor looked at the Dominion fleet on his display screen. 300 enemy ships stood between him and an innocent world. The odds were not great. But behind him stood 400 crews who had volunteered for this mission. 400 groups of men and women who had crossed the galaxy to help people they had never met. 400 ships full of humans who remembered what it felt like to be alone and afraid. "Open a channel to the Kethviri leadership," Ben ordered. "Let them know that help has arrived." The message was simple, sent in every language the human computers could translate. "This is Captain Ben Taylor of the United Earth Defense Fleet. We received your distress call. We are here to help. Tell us who needs to be removed and we will remove them." On Velerath Prime, Elder Morath listened to the message and felt tears streaming down his old face. He did not know if he should feel relieved or terrified. But one thing was certain. Elder Morath stood in the communication center, surrounded by every senior official on Velerath Prime. They all stared at the main screen, which showed the face of a human male. He had dark hair, tired eyes, and a calm expression that seemed completely out of place given the situation. "I am Captain Ben Taylor," the human said, through the translation software. "We received your distress signal. We are here to answer it." Morath stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. He had never spoken to a human before. He had never even seen one in person. Everything he knew about them came from stories and warnings passed down through generations. They were supposed to be terrifying, monsters from a death world, killers who enjoyed violence. But this human just looked tired, and perhaps a little sad. "I am Elder Morath, leader of the Kethviri people," he replied carefully. "We are grateful that you came, but I must confess something. Our distress signal was not meant for you. It was intended for the Galactic Council. Our equipment was damaged, and the message went to the wrong place." Ben nodded slowly. "We figured that out. Does it change anything?" Morath blinked in confusion. "I do not understand." "You needed help. You called into the dark, hoping someone would hear. We heard. Does it matter that we were not the ones you intended to reach?" The Kethviri officials exchanged uncertain glances. Commander Velson stepped forward, his expression suspicious. "What do you want from us? What is the price of your help?" Ben seemed genuinely puzzled by the question. "There is no price. You asked for help. We came to give it. That is all." "No species does that," Velson insisted. "Everyone wants something. Power, resources, territory. What is your real purpose here?" On the screen, Ben turned to speak with someone off-camera. A female human with sharp features and dark eyes stepped into view. "I am Commander Nora Reyes, Tactical Officer of the Valiant. Commander Velson, I understand your suspicion. The galaxy has taught you that kindness always comes with a cost. But humans are different." She paused and seemed to choose her next words carefully. "We come from a world that tried to kill us every single day. Our planet had poisonous plants, deadly predators, and weather that could destroy entire cities. We survived because we learned to work together. We learned that the only way to face impossible odds was to stand side by side with others." Nora met Velson's eyes through the screen. "That instinct did not disappear when we reached the stars. When we hear someone calling for help, we answer. Not because we expect payment, not because we want to conquer, but because helping those in need is who we are." Elder Morath felt something shift inside him. These humans were not what he expected. They spoke of suffering and survival, of standing together against darkness. They spoke like people who understood what it meant to be afraid and alone. "The Dominion of Ash," Morath said quietly. "They have blockaded our world. They demand our complete surrender. If we do not comply, they will destroy us." Ben's expression hardened. "Tell me about them." "They are conquerors. They have destroyed dozens of civilizations across this region of space. They take everything of value and kill everyone who resists. They show no mercy and accept no negotiation." "How many ships?" "Approximately 300 warships. We have 17. Ben nodded as if this was exactly what he expected. "And how much time before their deadline?" "Less than 40 hours. The human captain turned to Nora and spoke in a language the translators could not fully capture. Then he turned back to the screen. "Elder Morath, here is what is going to happen. We are going to contact the Dominion commander and give them one chance to leave this system peacefully. If they refuse, we will remove them by force." Velson made a choking sound. "You cannot be serious. They outnumber you, and they have been conquering star systems for centuries. You know nothing about their weapons or tactics." Ben smiled, and for the first time, Morath saw a hint of something dangerous in those tired eyes. "Commander, I appreciate your concern, but humanity has been fighting against impossible odds since before we discovered fire. We have a saying on Earth: it is not the size of the dog in the fight that matters. It is the size of the fight in the dog." He straightened his uniform and turned to his crew. "Open a channel to the Dominion flagship. Let us have a conversation." The face that appeared on the human view screen was not remotely human. Warlord Quetzal had gray skin covered in hard scales, 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, and a mouth full of teeth designed for tearing flesh. He looked at the human captain with obvious contempt. "So the Deathworlders have come to interfere," Quetzal said. "I was wondering when you primitives would crawl out of your corner of space. What do you want?" Ben kept his voice calm and pleasant. "I am Captain Ben Taylor of the United Earth Defense Fleet. I am here to inform you that this star system is under our protection. You have 1 hour to withdraw your forces. If you do not, we will be forced to remove you." Quetzal stared at him for a long moment. Then he began to laugh. It was an ugly sound, harsh and mocking. "You threaten me? You with your pitiful collection of ships? I have conquered empires larger than your entire species. I have burned worlds to ash while their defenders begged for mercy. And you think you can stand against the Dominion? I think you have 1 hour to find out," Ben replied calmly. The warlord's laughter stopped. "You are either very brave or very stupid. Perhaps both. Very well, human, I will give you your hour, and when that hour ends, I will teach you what happens to species that challenge the dominion of Ash." The communication ended. Ben turned to face his bridge crew, who were all watching him with a mixture of excitement and concern. "Danny, how are the engines?" Lieutenant Danny Shaw grinned from his station. "Ready to push them as hard as you need, sir. The fleet is reporting all systems operational." Nora, tactical assessment. Commander Reyes pulled up a display showing the enemy formation. "They are overconfident. Their ships are spread out in a standard blockade pattern, not a defensive formation. They are not expecting us to actually attack. Signal the fleet. Battle formation Alpha. We hit them fast and hard before they can reorganize." On Velerath Prime, the Kathviri watched their sensors with growing disbelief. The human fleet was actually moving into attack position. 400 ships against 300, with no knowledge of the enemy's capabilities, no retreat plan, and no backup. Talina watched the display with her hearts pounding. "They are really going to fight for us." Elder Morath nodded slowly. "It appears they are." "Why?" she asked, the same question everyone was thinking. "They do not know us. They gain nothing from this. Why would they risk their lives for strangers?" Morath remembered the words the human tactical officer had spoken, about surviving a death world, about learning to stand together, about answering the call for help simply because it was who they were. "Perhaps," he said quietly, "we have been wrong about humans all along." The hour passed in tense silence. Every species in the system watched and waited. The Dominion ships remained in position, their commanders confident that the humans would back down when faced with the reality of the situation. They did not back down. At exactly 1 hour, Captain Ben Taylor opened a fleet-wide channel. His voice was calm, but there was iron underneath it. "All ships, this is the Valiant. The enemy has refused to withdraw. They have chosen violence over peace. They have threatened the innocent people of this world." He paused and looked around his bridge at the men and women who had followed him across the galaxy. "Show them what happens when you threaten people under human protection. All ships, engage." 400 warships surged forward as one, their weapons charging, their shields blazing with power. The Battle of Velerath Prime had begun. The first human missiles crossed the distance between the fleets in less than 30 seconds. They struck the forward Dominion ships before the enemy commanders could even finish shouting orders. Explosions bloomed in the darkness of space like deadly flowers. Warlord Quetzal watched his tactical display with growing disbelief. The humans were not supposed to attack. They were supposed to see the size of his fleet and run away like sensible creatures. Instead, they had charged directly into his formation with weapons blazing. "All ships, return fire," he commanded. "Destroy these fools." The Dominion fleet began to respond, but they were slow. They had been sitting in blockade formation for days, waiting for the Kathviri to surrender. Their weapons were cold, their shields were down, and their crews were unprepared for an immediate fight. The humans gave them no time to prepare. Captain Ben Taylor stood at the center of the Valiant's bridge, watching the battle unfold on his tactical display. Commander Nora Reyes called out coordinates and targets with rapid precision, directing the fleet's fire like a conductor leading an orchestra. Carrier Group, focus on their left flank. Cruiser Squadron, punch through the center. Fighter Wings, clear a path for the heavy ships. The human fleet moved with deadly coordination. They had trained for decades, in simulation after simulation, preparing for a war that everyone hoped would never come. Now that war was here, and they were ready. Lieutenant Commander Chris Santos led a squadron of 40 fighters directly into the heart of the enemy formation. His ship was small and fast, designed for speed rather than armor. The enemy point defense systems tried to track him, but he was already past them before they could fire. All fighters, target the shield generators on that big one, Chris ordered. We knock out their defenses, and the heavy cruisers can finish them off. His squadron swarmed around a massive Dominion battleship, their weapons finding weak points in the enemy armor. The battleship tried to swat them away, but the human pilots were too fast, too skilled, too determined. Within minutes the ship's shields collapsed, and a barrage of missiles from the cruiser squadron turned it into an expanding cloud of debris. On the bridge of the Valiant, Ben watched the battle with grim satisfaction. The humans were winning, but it was not without cost. He saw ships winking out on his display, crews dying in the cold darkness of space. Every loss felt like a knife in his chest. "Sir, the Dominion is trying to reorganize," Nora reported. "They are pulling back their capital ships to form a defensive line." "Do not let them," Ben ordered. "Press the attack. Keep them off balance." The battle raged for hours. The humans fought with a ferocity that shocked the Dominion commanders. When their weapons ran dry, they rammed enemy ships with their own vessels. When their shields failed, they kept firing until their hulls melted around them. When they were ordered to retreat, they refused. Captain Maria Vega commanded the destroyer USS Defiance, a mid-sized ship with a crew of 200. Her vessel had been part of the flanking force, designed to cut off enemy reinforcements. But when she saw a wing of Dominion bombers breaking through the line and heading toward Velerath Prime, she made a decision that would be remembered for centuries. "All hands, this is the captain," she announced over the ship's communication system. "A Dominion bombardment wing is heading for the planet. If they reach it, millions of innocent people will die. We are the only ship in position to stop them." She paused and looked at her crew, these men and women who had followed her across the galaxy to help strangers they had never met. "I am not going to lie to you. If we move to intercept, we will take heavy fire. Some of us might not make it. But if we do nothing, an entire civilization will be destroyed." There was a moment of silence. Then her first officer, a young man named Tommy Park, spoke up. "Captain, what are we waiting for?" The Defiance turned toward the bombardment wing and accelerated to maximum speed. Maria positioned her ship directly between the enemy bombers and the planet below. The Dominion ship saw the lone destroyer blocking their path and opened fire. The Defiance shook under the impact. Warning alarms filled the bridge. Hull breaches appeared across the ship. But Maria held her position, her weapons crews firing back with everything they had. "Shields at 20%, Tommy reported. "We cannot take much more of this." "We do not need to take much more," Maria replied. "We just need to hold them long enough for backup to arrive." On the surface of Velerath Prime, the Kethviri watched the battle in stunned silence. Elder Morath stood beside Talina in the command center, both of them unable to look away from the display screens. "That ship," Talina whispered, pointing at the Defiance. "She is taking all that fire to protect us." Morath nodded slowly, tears forming in his old eyes. "She is dying to protect us, strangers she has never met, a species she has never spoken to, and she is giving her life for us. The Defiance took hit after hit, her hull crumbling under the assault. But Maria refused to move. Every second she held her position was another second the planet survived. Every moment she endured was a moment the bombers could not complete their mission. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a voice crackled over the communication system. Defiance, this is the Valiant. Reinforcements are 30 seconds out. Hold your position. Holding, Maria replied, her voice strained but steady. The backup arrived in a wave of fire and fury. A full cruiser squadron dropped out of formation and slammed into the Dominion bombers, destroying them in a matter of minutes. The threat to Velerath Prime was eliminated. The Defiance drifted in space, her engines dead, her hull full of holes. But she had survived, and so had the planet she had protected. As the battle continued around them, rescue ships moved to evacuate the Defiance's crew. Maria was the last one off, carried away on a stretcher with burns covering most of her body. But she was alive, and she was smiling. The turning point came when the human fleet reached the Dominion flagship. Warlord Quetzal had positioned his command ship at the center of his formation, surrounded by his best defenders. He believed it was untouchable. He was wrong. Captain Ben Taylor led a coordinated strike against the flagship's defenses. Fighter squadrons cleared the way, while cruisers hammered the escort ships. The Valiant itself fired the final shot, a massive railgun round that pierced the flagship's reactor core. The explosion was visible from Velerath Prime. Quetzal had time for one final transmission before his ship was consumed by fire. It was not a threat or a curse. It was a question, screaming into the void as death rushed toward him. Why? Why would you die for strangers? On the bridge of the Valiant, Ben heard the question. He had no time to answer before the flagship exploded, taking the warlord with it. But he knew what he would have said, because that is who we are. The destruction of the flagship broke the Dominion's will to fight. Their formation collapsed into chaos. Ships began to flee in every direction, abandoning their conquest, abandoning their comrades, running from the Deathworld warriors who had come out of nowhere to defend a species they had never met. The battle lasted 8 more hours as the human fleet hunted down every last Dominion ship that refused to surrender. By the time it was over, the enemy fleet had been reduced from 300 ships to 47. The rest were destroyed, captured, or scattered across the galaxy. The human losses were significant. 63 ships destroyed, 12,000 lives lost. But Velerath Prime was safe. The Kethviri would live. As the last enemy ship fled the system, Captain Ben Taylor sat down in his command chair for the first time in hours. His body ached. His mind was exhausted, and his heart was heavy with the weight of everyone they had lost. Commander Nora Reyes stood beside him, her face showing the same exhaustion. "We won, sir." "Yes," Ben agreed quietly. "We did." On the planet below, the Kethviri emerged from their shelters and looked up at the sky. The red glow of enemy ships was gone, replaced by the calm darkness of peaceful space. They were free. Elder Morath stood in the doorway of his home, watching the stars with tears streaming down his face. A species of monsters had saved his people. A civilization of Deathworlders had sacrificed their own lives to protect strangers. Everything he thought he knew about humans was wrong, and somewhere in the back of his mind, a new thought began to form. A thought about friendship, about alliance, about standing together against the darkness. The battle was over, but the story was just beginning. 3 days had passed since the battle. The skies above Velerath Prime were quiet now, filled only with the peaceful hum of repair ships and medical transports. The wreckage of war drifted in orbit, a silent reminder of what had happened here. On the planet's surface, the Kethviri people were still trying to understand their salvation. They had prepared for death, for conquest, for the end of everything they had ever known. Instead, they had been given a future. And that future had come from the most unexpected place in the galaxy. Elder Morath stood on a landing platform near the capital city, watching a human shuttle descend from the sky. The second wave of reinforcements had arrived the day after the battle, led by Admiral Lisa Carter herself. She had come not to conquer, but to help with the recovery. The shuttle landed gently, and its door opened. Admiral Carter stepped out, followed by several of her officers. She was a tall woman with gray hair and kind eyes, wearing a uniform covered in medals and insignia that Morath did not understand. "Elder Morath," she said, extending her hand in what Morath had learned was a human greeting gesture. "I am Admiral Lisa Carter. I apologize for not arriving sooner." Morath took her hand carefully, still amazed by the physical contact. Kethviri did not touch strangers this way. "Admiral Carter, there is no need to apologize. Your people saved us. We owe you everything." Lisa shook her head. "You owe us nothing. We did what anyone should do when someone asks for help." "But that is exactly what makes you remarkable," Morath replied. "No other species in this galaxy would have done what you did. No one else would have sent 400 ships to save strangers. No one else would have sacrificed 12,000 lives for a people they had never met." Lisa's expression grew somber. "Those losses weigh heavily on us. Every life matters. But our people knew the risks when they volunteered. They came because it was the right thing to do." Morath led her through the streets of the capital. Everywhere they walked, Kethviri stopped to stare. Some bowed in respect. Others simply watched in silent wonder. These were the humans, the Deathworlders, the monsters of legend, and they looked nothing like the stories had said. They reached the central plaza, where a temporary memorial had been erected. 63 columns of light rose into the sky, one for each human ship that had been lost. Thousands of Kethviri had gathered there to pay their respects. "We built this for your fallen," Morath explained. "We did not know how humans honor their dead, so we used our own tradition. The lights will burn for 100 days, and their names will be added to our sacred records." Lisa stood before the memorial, her eyes glistening. "This is beautiful." "It is the least we could do." Morath paused, gathering his thoughts. "Admiral, may I ask you something?" "Of course." "When your people received our distress signal, you knew it was sent by mistake. You knew we had spent decades avoiding your species. You knew the galaxy considers you dangerous and unpredictable. Why did you still come? Why did you risk everything for people who had treated you with fear and suspicion?" Lisa was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft but steady. "Because we remember what it was like to be alone. Humanity spent thousands of years looking up at the stars, wondering if anyone else was out there. When we finally reached space and found other civilizations, we were so excited. We thought we would find friends, allies, beings who shared our dreams of exploration and discovery." She turned to face Morath. "Instead, we found fear. Everyone was afraid of us. They called us Deathworlders and warned each other to stay away. For 50 years, we have been isolated, ignored, treated like monsters. It hurt. It still hurts. But when we received your signal, we did not see aliens who had rejected us. We saw people who were afraid and alone, facing impossible odds with no one coming to help. We saw ourselves, and we could not turn away." Morath felt tears forming in his eyes. "I am sorry. I am sorry for how the galaxy has treated you." Lisa smiled gently. "You have nothing to apologize for. But perhaps things can be different now. Perhaps this is the beginning of something new." Later that day, a formal ceremony was held in the Great Hall of the Kethviri government. Representatives from every region of the planet had gathered to witness an historic event. Elder Morath stood before them, with Admiral Carter at his side. "My people," Morath began, "3 days ago we faced extinction. The Dominion of Ash had come to destroy us, and we had no hope of survival. But then, something miraculous happened. A species we had been taught to fear, a civilization we had avoided for generations, came to our rescue." He gestured toward Lisa and the human officers behind her. "The humans asked nothing from us. They demanded no payment, no territory, no submission. They simply answered our call for help and fought to protect us. 12,000 of their people died defending our world." The hall was completely silent. Every Kethviri listened with rapt attention. "I have spoken with Admiral Carter at length. I have learned about human history, human culture, human values. And I have come to realize that everything we thought we knew about them was wrong. Humans are not monsters. They are protectors. They are guardians of the weak. They are the kind of friends that every civilization hopes to find among the stars." Morath turned to face Lisa directly. "Admiral Carter, on behalf of the Kethviri people, I formally request an alliance between our species. We offer our friendship, our resources, and our eternal gratitude. We ask to stand beside humanity, not as subjects or servants, but as equals and partners." Lisa stepped forward, her voice carrying across the Great Hall. "Elder Morath, on behalf of the United Earth Government, I accept your offer of alliance. From this day forward, the Kethviri and humanity will stand together. Your enemies will be our enemies. Your struggles will be our struggles. And whenever you face darkness, you will not face it alone." The hall erupted in cheers. Kethviri embraced each other, wept with joy, and raised their voices in celebration. For the first time in their history, they had found true friends among the stars. News of the Battle of Velerath Prime spread across the galaxy like wildfire. A human armada had traveled across space to save a species they had never met. And that species had repaid them with friendship and alliance. Other civilizations began to watch humanity with new eyes. The old stories about Deathworlders and monsters seemed less convincing now. Perhaps the humans were not villains after all. Perhaps they were something else entirely. On distant worlds, oppressed peoples began to whisper about the humans. They spoke of the armada that had come out of nowhere, the warriors who fought for strangers, the civilization that answered calls for help. They began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, they were not alone in the darkness. Weeks later, Captain Ben Taylor stood on the bridge of the USS Valiant. The ship had been repaired and resupplied, ready for whatever mission came next. His crew moved around him with quiet efficiency, the bond between them stronger than ever after what they had survived together. Commander Nora Reyes approached him with a tablet in her hand. "Sir, we have received a new transmission, another distress signal." Ben took the tablet and looked at the data. Another species, another crisis, another cry for help from somewhere in the vast darkness of space. "Where is it coming from?" "A system about 600 light-years away, a small civilization being threatened by raiders. They are asking anyone who can hear them to please send help." Ben looked at the message for a long moment. Then he looked at his crew, at the men and women who had followed him across the galaxy once before. "How many ships do we have available?" Nora checked her display. 37. More are being repaired, but they will not be ready for weeks. 37 will have to do. He handed the tablet back to her. "Signal the fleet. We have work to do." Nora smiled. "Yes, sir." As the Valiant prepared to jump to faster-than-light speed, Ben allowed himself a moment of reflection. The galaxy had called humanity monsters for 50 years. They had been feared, avoided, and isolated. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was that someone out there was afraid. Someone was calling for help. And humanity would answer, just as they always did. Set a course, Ben ordered. They called. We answer. The Valiant leaped into the darkness between stars, carrying hope to another world that had none. Behind them, the galaxy watched and wondered, and slowly, star by star, the old stories about humanity began to change. They were still Deathworlders, still survivors of a planet that tried to kill them every day. But they were something else, too. They were the ones who came when you called. They were the ones who fought for strangers. They were humanity. And they were always listening.